good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Craig Bowden, and I am your Marine Vet for Freedom and candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Today I wanted to address something, and I know it happened a little while ago, but I did want to kind of make my comments. If you've been following me on Twitter, you've seen how I feel about President Obama basically calling these scandals nothing more than phony and distractions for political reasons. Now, these are the scandals that involve his administration and show a total lack of leadership and accepting responsibility, to be perfectly frank. So let me go ahead and address you, Mr. Obama. Will you ever see this? I don't know. Couldn't really tell you. But I am going to be speaking directly to you and members of your administration. So let's talk about these phony scandals, these distractions. Let's go all the way back to the lovely Operation Fast and Furious. Do you really consider it to be phony that approximately 10,000 Mexican citizens have been killed because of your gun walking? Bear in mind, you were warned by the outgoing administration that they had a similar program. It was much more controlled, and they lost track of the weapons and were unable to continue to monitor. And they warned you, don't do it. So what did you guys do? Oh, that's right. You broadened the freaking thing. You made it so there were more gun shops that were selling and making their way to cartels. Then one of our border agents, Brian Terry, was killed by a drug runner with one of these firearms that your Department of Justice decided to go ahead and put out. Who's been fired? Who's been held accountable? They say rogue agent. It was one lone agent from the ATF. Yet Eric Holder's signature is on those papers. He's the one that runs the Department of Justice, and he didn't know of such a broad program? This shows incompetence at a very severe level, or it was intended to be this way. Neither of which is good for the American people. But this is just something phony. It's just a distraction. No, this is dead serious. Hi, Kenzie. My daughter is listening in as well, so bear with me if I get poked or you hear a little bit of laughter. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one that I'd like to talk about, and that's Benghazi. So let's talk a little bit about Benghazi, because this one pisses me the hell off. Why does it piss me off so much? Because there were over 30 people left to die. And if it wouldn't have been for 2 Navy SEALs disregarding stand-down orders and going and fighting anyways, there would have been more than 4 people killed. Now, you don't think that this warrants any sort of investigation? There are members of Congress who think that this case is closed, everything's wrapped up. I still have questions. For instance, why was there no rescue attempt? Why did nobody attempt to get there? Oh wait, there were people that were standing to, as is their job, and they were ordered to stand down from the rescue. What was cited? Two things. There wasn't enough time. Let's ponder that for a moment. There wasn't enough time. How could you possibly know that? Because the forces in Italy were approximately 480 miles away. Now I can drive 480 miles in about 6 hours. Plane flies a hell of a lot faster than I drive. They could have been there within 2 hours. The attack lasted 7. How would the Pentagon and the State Department know how long that attack was going to last? That's one of my questions. I have another question. Why was the security denied? Because there were cited, issues of, during the hearings of budget constraints, but yet there was $100,000 spent giving green cars to embassies. What's more important, the protection of your ambassadors or making sure that they have green cars and charging stations? You can blame the budget all you want, but let's look at another fact. There's been no budget passed. Sounds a little ridiculous, doesn't it? How can it be a budget constraint if there's no budget? Here's another question. Why was the narrative pushed for about 2 weeks of it being a YouTube video that sparked the violence? Because it seems to me that people are getting promoted for running this agenda. This is ridiculous. You call this fake? You call this phony? You call this nothing more than a distraction? I am glad to know that 4 American lives are a distraction. I'm glad to know that they're nothing more than bumps in the road. That makes me feel totally secure, Mr. President. That makes me feel outstanding about how you would feel if my children were killed. This was a terrorist attack. One that could have been prevented. I have my speculations on why your administration decided to do nothing. And I have one final question. Nobody seems to know your whereabouts on the night of the Benghazi attack. But I know for a fact that the Secret Service maintains a log 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year of your whereabouts. It's part of their job. I want those documents released. I want to know where you were. That's what I want. They're probably sitting in the same place where your college records are and all your background information is. I know you won't because you're a coward. You're afraid to face the music. Where to go on from here? Ah, yes. There was the lovely Internal Revenue Service scandal where conservatives were targeted, audited, had their information released, and then groups that opposed your political ideology were shut down. they ended up having to go through a longer process. They were harassed. They were asked questions that aren't even legitimate. What kind of prayers do you have? What kind of books do you read? Who are your members? Now see, how would I know this information on how it's so wrong? I worked there for 3 years. And unlike your cronies and your worshipers that I had to deal with every single day, I actually tried to execute my job fairly and justly, as all the posters throughout the IRS say. But your worshipers there, it's a different story. There are horror stories in the Internal Revenue Service, and I'll be blowing the whistle on those. I guarantee you that. There is nothing fair about that organization. But you want to say that this is phony. You want to say this is a distraction. It's only for political reasons. Let me ask you this. How did your organization get approved in 73 days, which is a record time frame? Your Acting for America organization. 73 days to get approval. Something isn't sitting right. Excuse me. Something is definitely not sitting right with that. When you have these other groups that it's taking months, if not years, to get their approval, and many of them just gave up because of the excruciating circumstances they had to go through just so that they could participate in the political process. This is nothing more than attempting to silence views that are opposed to your own. And I know that you're butthurt over 2010, because that was a pretty big upset, because groups like the ones that were applying told the truth, and you fear the truth, because if the people know the truth, we oppose you. That's why you lie. That's why you're still campaigning. That's why you're still acting like you're not a part of Washington, D.C. You sit there and you blame Washington for all kinds of troubles. Every speech I've heard you say, and you sit there and say that they aren't getting the job done. You're part of that. Unfortunately, your subscribers don't see it, because you're always out there talking about how you're going to fight it, how you're so opposed to it. If you're so opposed to it, go to DC and work. I'd say that's a scandal in and of itself. You've sat there and gone to colleges, to town hall meetings, and you've spoken to thousands of Americans about the problems in D.C. But what have you done to address them? Nothing. So let's go ahead and continue on with the actual official scandals now that I've gotten that off my chest. I want to talk about the Associated Press. When did it ever become okay to mass seize phone records without a warrant? Waiting. I'll be waiting on an answer for that because it's unconstitutional. This was used to harass the media into compliance. You don't think that I see it for what it is? What many Americans who aren't drinking your Kool-Aid You don't think that we don't see this? How about the false accusations against Mr. Rosen? Aiding and abetting? Really? You've got a lot to answer for, Mr. President. Because if you really don't know anything about any of these scandals and you're learning about it the same as all of us, then you have no control over the people that you put in office. And why haven't they been fired? Answer me that. Why have they not been fired? Because once again, with the Rosen thing and the AP seizure, that's Eric Holder again. The same one who hasn't prosecuted any of the banking fraud. The same one who hasn't prosecuted, I don't know, there was a few dozen federal gun violations from people attempting to buy firearms while you were parading around trying to take away rights from law-abiding citizens. He wouldn't even go after the criminals, the restricted persons who attempted to purchase. If I'm not mistaken, in 2012, there were only 44 out of thousands. How about the Black Panthers? They've used voter intimidation tactics, standing outside of polling places with batons and military uniforms. He didn't prosecute them, but he'll sure as heck go after me if I were to stand outside and poll or whatever. What is the deal? You can't fire this guy? Oh, that's right. You want him for a Supreme Court justice. I know your agenda. I can see you for what you're trying to do. You want him to be a Supreme Court justice, so that's why you're not getting rid of him. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about the National Security Administration. Because Lord knows they're watching this right now. You're tagged in the video. Guarantee you they watch this with some interest. What right do you have to monitor electronic communications of the American people? What right? Show me where in the Constitution it says the government can wiretap without a warrant. They can grab emails without a warrant. They can look at your text messages without a warrant. Show me where. Because I can show you exactly where it says you can't. I've been suspected of no crime, but I'm lumped into the category of American citizen. All my data is being collected. As a matter of fact, I fought for this nation against the terrorists you say that you're looking for. I'm running a political campaign so that I can try and change the way things are done. Yeah, totally need to be monitored. I'm totally a terrorist. You call all this false. You call it phony. You call it a distraction. I call it treason. I call it impeachable. Because there is no way with the massive amount of crap that is going on in your administration that your hands are clean. There is absolutely no way they're going to try to make it look that way. That much I know. But the fact of the matter is, in spite of all of everything that's happened, the worst thing that's happened to any of the people that were involved, they got promoted. Or there is some future promotions on the table. That's the worst that's happened. Heck, look at Lois Lerner. She's on vacation right now getting full pay for pleading the fifth and being involved in the IRS targeting. Let's take a look at Eric Holder, on tap for the Supreme Court. Ambassador Rice, moving on up. Last I checked, she was on tap for your National Security Advisor. What's the deal? You're supposed to be the President of the United States. Yet every single one of these scandals has not been handled. And every single one of these scandals looks like there's fingerprints with you involved. Well, I'm done with you, Mr. President. I'd like to go ahead and address Congress real quick. Members of the House and Senate, pull your heads out. Speaker Boehner especially. Any single one of these scandals would have had Bush, Reagan, Bush Sr., and even Bill Clinton on the chopping block pretty damn quickly. Start moving on the impeachment. You have the evidence. Impeach him. Grow a spine and do the job you were elected for, and that includes protecting and preserving the Constitution of the United States. This man, who claims to be president while he sits and does his campaign stump speeches nonstop and doesn't help our country and spits on everything we believe in, is a danger. He is a domestic enemy, and you have the power to stop him. So do it. Right now, the fabric of our nation is being destroyed, and the best you guys can do is a bunch of blowing smoke up America's rear end, saying that at some point you might do something, and criticizing him every now and then, but when it really comes down to it, you don't do crap. Let's look at Obamacare, for example. How many repeal votes have there been? If I'm not mistaken, 14. But when it comes time for the continuing resolutions, you continue to fund it. You have the power. You have the power of the purse. Defund it. What is wrong with you guys? This is why I chose to run. Because everybody's sitting there doing nothing but speaking, and nobody's standing up and saying what is happening. No one is doing anything. I took an oath 10 years ago that I would preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I swore to protect my country. And I'm watching it be destroyed. It's unsatisfactory. You took the same oath. And we're not even asking you to put your lives on the line. Stand up for the people. You're all cowardly. You're not doing what you're supposed to. You're too afraid to speak because you're worried about your election chances. Damn the freaking election chances. I would rather do my job. Pull your heads out. Because I'm not alone in these sentiments. And if you guys aren't going to pull your heads out, this country's going to collapse. We're already on the verge of collapsing. And you won't even address that. You think that I'm lying. You think that I'm full of smoke. Think it's nothing but hot air? You're dead wrong. I am trying to help the process. I have been denied letters. I've been told we're doing everything we can. But it's not the case. I've watched my representatives and my senators vote against the Constitution. Republicans say that they're the ones that are fighting for limited government. Like hell. I had to choose to run as an independent because of the way that you guys are running this country into the ground. You guys are just as complicit as the Democrats. I see through your crap too. And to the Democrats who are intentionally doing this shit, running freaking right in step with the president, I feel sorry. I don't know whether you're misguided or whether you're just freaking doing it on purpose because you're power hungry. I don't know how our country fell so far from the greatness and example that it once was. But it has fallen. The only way that we can restore it is to do what's right. To follow that Constitution. You guys got to get your stuff together. Whether or not I make it into Congress or not, it doesn't matter to me as long as you guys start doing what you're supposed to do. Just do what you were elected to do and protect and preserve that document. And that may mean putting your neck on the line. It may mean taking an unpopular stance. It may mean you might not get elected the next go around. But it's better to fail while standing for your principles